Well guys, I can't hardly believe it. I never would have guessed it a week ago, but yesterday I went and purchased a brand new Festool Kapex, whopping $1,600. It's painful for me because I can buy 3 DWS 780s, the DeWalt 12-inch sliders, for the price of one of these guys. But I had my back against the wall literally on my miter saw station over here, and I needed this saw for a few specific reasons. So we're gonna unbox this thing and see if I can get my miter saw station set up today. First thing I had to do is give it a good sniff. Doesn't have that new Festool smell like the Sustainers do. That's a little bit of a disappointment. Fun fact, several years ago, I was running Festool Kapex saws exclusively to trim houses, and I just assumed because I was paying a ton of money that they must be perfect, and you didn't have to calibrate them out of the box, and the fences were all straight and whatnot. Well, I had one saw, after I had started using it, I couldn't get it calibrated. Come to find out, the fence back here was actually not straight. It was bowed in, which makes it impossible to calibrate the saw. So the first thing I'm doing here is seeing if my fence is straight or not, using this nice Lee Valley straight edge. This is what I calibrate all my saws with. Now it does look like my fences are straight. I don't have any gaps or anything across the fence. Unfortunately, whenever I do put my straight edge here on the base of the saw, you can see that I've got that rocking motion because this is high right here. Unfortunately, I had this same thing with my other Kapex saws years ago. It was really annoying. I mean, I could try and sand this down and do something with it. It's probably not worth the effort. But this right here, this is a brand new DeWalt saw that I purchased just about a month or two ago. And it is perfectly flat all the way across the base. So again, for all the guys out there who might wrongly think that since you're paying 3 times as much money for a Festool saw that it's going to be better, it's not necessarily true. So you're probably getting the feeling that I have a lot of love for the Festool Kapex. It's a love-hate relationship. Why did I buy one? I'm in my shop, new shop, built this miter saw wall station, lots of cabinets. This is where the saw is going to go. I'll show you why I needed it. As you can see here, I built these cabinets out of pre-finished plywood. It took a lot of plywood to build this all out. Now, these cabinets are 24 inches deep. For a miter saw station, it's actually nicer to have a little bit more depth than 24 inches. But if I would have built these cabinets wider, it would have taken a ton more plywood and I would have had a lot of waste, and I didn't want that. So I do have the back of the cabinet built off about 1.5 inches from the back wall to give me a little bit more depth. And then obviously I've got the fronts on here. So I'm at a total of about 26.5 inches to the front of my cabinet, about 27 to the front of my countertop here. That doesn't give me a lot of space for these big sliding miter saws. Long story short, I kind of screwed up when I designed this whole wall. I based my design off of the miter saw that I had in my old shop, which is this one here. I just looked at the serial number on it. It dates 2009. So this miter saw is about 15 years old. It's seen a lot of use and it's starting to get a little bit loose. So I wanted to replace it. I go to Lowe's. I bought a new DWS 780. This is the saw that I use on the job site all the time. However, they always are updating these saws and changing things, and they never really have like press releases to tell us what they change. And you can see there's a big difference between this old 12-inch slider and this new 12-inch slider. This one here is a 718, this is a 780. Look at where the fences are at. On this new saw, I went and bought it, plopped it down on the bench, and I was like, holy cow, this thing sits way further forward. Somehow they extended the rail design on the back. I've got the saw pushed all the way up against the back wall right here, and my fences are all the way up here. So I have the front of the saw base here sitting off of my countertop. It just simply wasn't gonna work. So I was like, really bummed about that. So if you look here at my old saw, it's all the way back against the back wall here, and the fence sits about 18 inches off of the back wall. This new 780 that I just picked up, the fence sits over 22 inches off of the back wall. So this was already not ideal. It would work, but it's not ideal. This saw is just impractical for the situation that I have here because of how much space that it takes up. On top of all that, the dust port on the DeWalt points straight out the back. So if you want to stick a hose on the back and actually try and have some dust collection, you would have to have the saw even farther forward. So I'm like coming way up here just to be able to pivot this thing. It just takes up a ton of space. Now, to be fair to DeWalt, I think the vast majority of the people who use these saws are not using them with dust collection. On the job site, when I use these, I usually just let it fly, or I'll have my dust hood, so it's really not a factor where that dust port is. The Kapex is designed a lot better. Maybe it's not right for me to say the Kapex is designed better, it's just designed differently. It's designed for different situations. This saw has a forward rail design. So the rails come off the front here. That reduces the footprint of the saw off the backside. So if you're on a job site, you'll be able to push this saw a lot tighter up against a wall. Great for those remodeling situations and things like that. It's just different. It's not a big deal to me because on the homes that I trim, there's usually ample space and I don't need to have the saw pressed right up against a wall. But here in this shop, I do. So you'll notice where I've got this saw, I have plenty of space. The back fences are 15 inches off of the back wall here, whereas if I come down to this new DeWalt 780, the 12-inch slider, I'm at 22 inches. So it's a 7-inch difference to where my back fence is. That's gonna allow me to use these cabinets and have about 12 inches of material support going down my countertop here. That's why I ended up purchasing this saw. The other thing is, I will say for the problems that I had with the Kapex years ago when I was using them, I did love the dust collection. One thing about the Kapex is you do want to have it hooked up to a vacuum. I do find that it's annoying where they have the dust shroud on the back here. Where it's located, it tends to just shoot all the dust right up in the air. So it's not great if you don't have a vacuum attached to it, in my opinion. But in a shop situation like this, the nice thing is where they have their dust shroud, I can hook my hose up to it, which is going to be on all the time. I'm making this look harder than it is. There we go. I like these bigger hoses. This is a Bosch 35 millimeter hose. It's got a lot of volume and it really works great with the Kapex. So you can have your hose right here and it's coming off the back side and the top of the saw at an angle here. So you'll notice it's not hitting my wall at all. So I'll be able to have dust collection here on the back side as well as coming off the blade. So it'll work really, really well in the saw, in the shop, I should say. So that's why I ended up purchasing this. It was 3 times the price of the DeWalt saw for this, but it just fit the application that I needed so much better that I think it's gonna be worth it. I'm really excited. The shop's coming along nicely. Now that I've got this saw, I can finally finish this whole wall. So I've got my dust collection coming down the wall right here. I need to finish that off. I'm gonna put a chute on the back side of this saw to catch everything that falls down. And then I'll also have the hose connected catching everything that's coming off of the blade. Gonna get that set up. I've also got my Kreg stop block system that I'll be putting on this side of the saw over here, and just getting this all dialed in. So let's dig into it. All right, here I've got my dust shroud. I've got it traced out and I'm gonna start hacking away at it, see if I can make this thing fit. So there we go. Now I could go to the extra work of actually recessing this flange down so that it's flush. I don't think I'm gonna do that. I think I'm actually gonna just add some caulking on this bottom lip so that it's airtight and set that down in there, and then that'll be good enough to brush dust in there. Alrighty, we've got our little dust chute on the back here installed. Went ahead and used some screws to hold that down, and rather than try to caulk it, I just used my foil tape that I was using for my duct work. So that's sealed up nice and tight. I did that because I didn't want dust kind of getting into this cabinet area more than it absolutely would have to. So we're all set up here. I've got my line coming in to go to the back of the Kapex right there, and we're just shooting out the side of this cabinet. I left this cabinet open strategically to put a trash can in there and then to be able to do stuff like that. It's nice to have some open spaces on the side of the miter saw. So it's time to set this thing in place. The Kapex actually comes with rubber feet on the bottom here, so that probably if you're setting it down on a hardwood floor or something, you're not gonna scratch it. The problem with that is whenever you go to try to bolt this down, it compresses those rubber feet, and then it makes your saw go lower than what you think it should go. So I ended up adding a couple washers under those feet, and then I screwed this down and compressed that rubber piece on the bottom until it was just right. So everything is looking really good. We're nice and even across here, and the saw's not moving at all. So that's what we want. This was just 3/4 plywood going across here, and I didn't want it to deflect over time. So I did add a couple pieces of 1x across the bottom here, pocket hole screwed those up, and that'll give this some rigidity to keep it from deflecting. And there you can see my washers underneath there. That's where those rubber feet are. And this is where the screw goes down, where I sucked that down and compressed it. But we don't want this thing moving, because the next thing I need to do is add a stop block system on this side. And we want this to stay calibrated all the time. I made adjustable shelves in all of these cabinets. So got that slid in there now, just underneath my hose. I kept that hose as high as I could to make room for that shelf. Close that up. I gotta admit, even though I wasn't excited about paying the money for this saw, having it in the shop now, I am really excited about the dust collection. I used the Kapex for a lot of years. I had 2 of them, and I know how good the dust extraction is on it. It's very well designed. So we got it hooked up. The question is, how will it work with my larger system versus not being hooked up to, you know, a Festool MIDI dust extractor or something like that. So let's take a look here, see how it does. Got my remote, click the dust collection on. First, let's take a look and see how this performs back here. Sucks that up really good. You can hear it going through the pipe. Really happy with how that's working. It's really pulling it through nicely. So then the question is, how is this hose? We're gonna have decent suction on it. It looks pretty good. It's pulling quite a bit of air. As you can see here, my miter saw location is pretty close to where my dust collector is. I've got this main trunk line, it comes across at 8 inches and then tapers down here to my miter saw. So it's getting really good airflow. I'm really happy with how it's collecting everything right here. I think it's going to be really nice. You will notice there are no blast gates on anything right here. Whenever you design your dust collection system, you're always going to have 2 to 3, maybe more, depending on how large your dust collector is, lines that are always open, ports that are always open. So the way my old shop was, my table saw was always open and my miter saw was always open. I kept that the same. Those are your most used tools. That way, whenever you go to cut something, your dust collector's on, you don't have to worry about if a blast gate is open or closed. It's always pulling air from this location. Well guys, inevitably I get going working and I forget to turn the camera on. So I've got a few more things done here. You see behind me right here, I've got some material racks put up on this wall. The brand on these is Bora. I got them off Amazon. They install super fast. I had something similar in the old shop. They were a little bit smaller because I cut them down, so I bought these new. I've got 2 more that I'm gonna add right here. Amazon's gonna drop those off later today, so I don't have them yet, but this is gonna be super nice. My thought process here was that I would be able to stock my material up here on the rack and be able to pull it off and cut it whenever I'm building things. I think it'll help me stay a little bit more organized. There's also enough space that I can cut things and then put finished pieces up here, again, just to kind of help keep things organized. So I'm really looking forward to using that. I'll have a full 16 feet of material support on that rack, so I'll be able to get my full length finger jointed stock in here and put it up there. The other thing that I really like about this system is inevitably you have your fence on your miter saw right here, and this kind of creates a divider across your whole workbench. Inevitably, you always end up throwing crap on the workbench, and this kind of creates a line where you know, hey, I need to keep this area clear for cutting stuff, but then you can set things behind it here, and it works pretty well. So even though I'm not planning on having the stop block on this side of the saw, I may end up still putting a piece of 1x across here just to keep this cutting area clear. That brings me to another very important part of this whole miter saw workstation, and that is my Kreg Forman pocket hole jig. Pocket hole machine, I should say. I use this thing a ton. To me, the Kreg Forman is one of the best ROI tools that you can buy. They really don't cost that much, 350, 400 bucks, something like that. They pay for themselves so fast. So I love this machine, use it a ton for cabinets, built-ins, everything. The key to getting the most out of this machine is to have it set up well. Having good side support for whenever you're boring cabinet parts is key. The way I had it in my old shop, I had the same thing. It was on the right side of my miter saw. That was just kind of where it worked out. Ended up putting it in a very similar place here. The thing about this machine is it is a pretty deep machine, and the fence on this machine does not match up very well with the fence on a miter saw. On your miter saw, the fence is a lot further forward. So on my old shop, what I did to solve this problem is I made it so that this could slide out. So I've got the same thing here. I've got a channel that this rides on, so you can see I can put full support up here, and it supports itself. If I run my divider that I was just talking about from the miter saw stop block track, you know, that'll be like somewhere right around in here. That'll allow me to be able to pull this forward and get this fence out in front of my divider track right here if I want to do that. The nice thing about this is then it also allows me to push it back, and then it's not sticking out past my workbench. The machine, it's about 27 inches deep, so that's just a nice way to design this and lay it out so that you can use it functionally, but yet you can push it back in and get that out of the way and not have to have it sticking out here. The biggest problem that I've got with the pocket hole machine is I don't have dust collection run to it. I didn't have it run to it in the old shop either. So this whole cavity on the underside just fills up with wood chips and sawdust. And as I use it, I kind of just pull it out and give it a shake and let that sawdust level out once in a while. And then occasionally you either take this off or you can pop the lid up and get to it and suck all of that sawdust out of there. So it doesn't make a ton of sawdust, so you don't have to empty it out a lot, but that's kind of an annoyance about this setup. But I'm not really looking to take the time to set up dust collection for this thing. All right, this just got some holes on the back side here. So really simple to install this stuff. Just slide it over your piece of 1x. Use some small screws and you tack it in from the back side. And that's it. Unfortunately, most of this is covered in adhesive from the last time I used this in the old shop, so I'm gonna have to try to do something about that before I put a new tape on there. There we go, I've got my tape installed and it's looking really good. It took me a while. I had to scrape all the adhesive off. I always try lacquer thinner first to see if it'll rub off, but it was way too thick. I ended up using one of these single blade scrapers. Works really well on metal like this whenever you need to scrape off some sticky glue. I only ended up running my sticky tape to the 12-foot mark because that's the length of tape that I had. Could have ran it all the way to 16 feet, but honestly, I can't remember a time where I've ever needed a stop block that long. Usually it's always under 10 feet in length. I did also add my fence on this side of the miter saw station as well. The main reason was just simply to separate this back area from the cutting area. That way when I'm throwing stuff up on this bench, trying to set stuff out of the way, I know where that line's at and I'm not gonna be getting stuff, mixed up. So even like here, I can set some sustainers back here. I think I'll probably end up putting pegboard back on this wall, maybe even some cabinets, but definitely probably some pegboard, at least about 20 inches high, because that's just a nice place to hang stuff. The last thing I wanted to touch on about this miter saw station is talking a little bit about the cabinets themselves. I've learned over the years when you're building shop cabinets, for me, it pays off to just use pre-finished plywood. It cleans up way better and just stays nicer over the long haul than trying to use like raw AC plywood. AC plywood tends to just get really dirty over time. I've got a couple examples in the shop of stuff that I've done. This is just raw AC plywood. Just gets pretty grungy after a while. You can't really clean this up or anything. This workbench I built, I used AC plywood, but I did put a lot of poly on this. So it's gonna look a little bit better, but it's a ton of labor to go through all of this area and apply poly to this whole thing. I spent a ton of time on it. To me, it's a lot better just to buy the pre-finished wood, and then it's just got a great finish on it. I mean, I shouldn't say great, but a good finish on it. It's very cleanable, and it looks good as well, and you don't spend all that time and labor on applying poly. In terms of design, when I built these cabinets, I essentially just designed two different units. I have a drawer unit and I have an open door unit. So these units have two doors. I believe they're 36 inches wide. And then I've got drawer units that are 30 inches wide. Made it a little bit easier to production build these cabinets, having everything be the same size. It's pretty amazing how much labor you see some guys put into their miter saw stations on YouTube. I wanted it to be nice but practical at the same time. I don't have a ton of time in life right now. We've got jobs going and I'm trying to get this shop outfitted. So I ended up just building the carcasses. I have exposed end grain on the plywood here. I didn't edge band the carcasses or anything. I built my drawers, very basic, nothing fancy about them. And then I did put drawer fronts on them, and I did go ahead and edge band those. I think it looks nice and kind of meets the middle ground of spending too much time and money on something, but yet still having a nice looking miter saw station to work with. Again, I did touch on this custom area here a little bit, having the ability to pull out the Kreg Forman. That way my fence can get in front of these auxiliary fences if need be. It's a nice feature. That was a unique size cabinet. And then on these other units, we've just got standard doors with adjustable shelves on the inside. So should work pretty good for me for a long time. A key thing that I did want was to be able to have a trash can on the side of the miter saw, because usually you're cutting things and you have offcuts and scraps you need to throw somewhere. So I wanted to be able to have a trash can right here. It also works well because my assembly table is right here and I generate miscellaneous trash here as well that I can just throw into this trash can. Moving down the way a little bit, just left one open cubby. If I need to roll a shop vac in there, I could even put some open shelves in there. I don't know. I just didn't want to have the same thing all the way across here. Wanted to have a couple open cavities for options. I did run an electrical outlet, tapped into that one up there, and this will feed the electric for my workbench over here. If you guys watching have any other suggestions on what I can do to improve this whole wall miter saw station, I'd love to hear them. For now, I've brought this a long way and it's finally at the point where I can actually get to work. I've got my stop block set up. I've got my dust collection set up. It's looking good. We can at least start getting some work done. So I think the Kapex is going to be a good fit. As much as it pains me to say it, it really meets the needs that I had in this situation with the compact size, dust collection, etc. I think it's going to be fun to use. So hope you enjoyed the video. Drop a comment. If you're new here, be sure to like and subscribe. And as always, we'll see you on the next video, and thanks for watching.